Y'all ready to talk about the most St. Clair County, Alabama schools? This one's been a long time coming. It's Valentine's weekend. I figure this is the best way to tell St. Clair County, Alabama that I love them. If you love somebody or something and it's got a problem, well, you should try to fix it. That's what I'm doing here. You see, I love St. Clair County, Alabama. I grew up out here, but I see that we got a whole lot of problems going on. And everybody seems to have either gone blind or tried to throw a rug over what's going on. That's not how I do things. I'm not scared to stage an intervention, and you guys are coming along with me. Now, if St. Clair County, Alabama was a person, honey, we'd done had her locked up. She'd spent at least 72 hours in there and probably a couple of weeks. She'd come out heavily medicated because it kind of looks like she's having a mental breakdown. We're going to talk about all that. I have about 20 or so videos on St. Clair County, Alabama schools and different things that have happened. But I'm going to put all that information together for you right here, and I'm going to add some stuff to it. So let's get going tonight on the porch with Munchies and Murder. Now, St. Clair County, Alabama schools went back on August the 12th. By August the 15th, the first incident had already happened. Now, that happened over there at Odenville Middle School in Odenville, Alabama, at that old back-to-school dance. Now, that old dance took place in the dark. You need to know that before I get into this story. There were several girls that were assaulted at that dance. Some of them had their clothes pulled up. Some of them were touched inappropriately. Some of them had photos taken of them. Now, of course, there were chaperones at that dance, but I've seen some videos from previous back-to-school dances over there at Odenville Middle School, and them teachers were dancing, socializing, which is fine. They clearly weren't paying attention to those students. And I'm sure the thing was going down like it previously did, and them teachers were socializing. They probably weren't paying much attention until things started to go haywire over there on August the 15th. In that dark gym where the back-to-school dance was taking place. Now, them girls got scared and rightfully ran to the bathroom to hide. Some of the other boys tried to help them. Some of them girls wanted to call their parents and leave early. The school staff wouldn't let them. Now, the school staff claimed that they investigated the situation, but they didn't turn them lights on. They claimed they looked at the video footage, but it was in the dark. And I'm pretty sure Odenville Middle School doesn't have cameras in their gym that have night vision. Now, according to Odenville Middle School and St. Clair County law enforcement officials, they investigated this situation and it didn't happen. But something happened to those girls in that gym on August the 15th in the dark at the back-to-school dance. Now, by August 19th, St. Clair County Board of Education had set up a meeting to talk to these parents who were all very upset. St. Clair County Board of Education said they had investigated the situation and it did not happen. And in addition to that, the spouse of a teacher from Odenville Middle School stood up and basically called those victims, the girls that were assaulted in the dark at Odenville Middle School in that gym, liars. Now, according to the staff at Odenville Middle School, St. Clair County Board of Education, and St. Clair County law enforcement officials, they investigated the incident and they didn't find any evidence. But something happened to those girls in that dark gym that night. That was the fastest investigation I've ever seen in my life. It's like the Flash took over St. Clair County law enforcement officials. Nothing was ever done. Some of the girls were moved to other classes to make them feel a little safer, but nothing was officially done to address several girls being sexually assaulted in the gym at Odenville Middle School in the dark at the back-to-school dance that took place on August the 15th. Now, the next incident took place just 12 days later, again in St. Clair County school system at Springville Middle School in Springville, Alabama. A student made a threat on August the 27th. The same day as the school mass shooting in Minneapolis. Now, that student wasn't reported. That student didn't get in trouble. Nothing happened. The SRO was not told. But other students heard him. And one of those students went home and told his mother. And his mother went to the school to speak to the principal, Wesley Graham. Now, Wesley Graham said the student wasn't serious and that he had addressed the situation. But that is not what St. Clair County protocol calls for. Now, the St. Clair County Board of Education handbook addresses threats specifically. It lays out exactly what is supposed to happen, but that is not what occurred on August the 27th at Springville Middle School. Wesley Graham chose not to report that incident. That mother waited a few days, and after nothing was done, she posted on Facebook, where the Springville parents attacked her like a pack of wild animals, y'all. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. This mother was telling those Springville parents that a threat had been made to their children and that it had not been reported. that it had not been addressed. They didn't care. They rallied around Wesley Graham like he was some kind of saint, y'all. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And this is when a term is going to come in that I'm going to use a few times. It's called performative Christianity. I'm talking about people who perform as if they're Christian, but only when the time calls for it. And when I tell y'all they circled around Wesley Graham like he was some kind of saint, they did. All they talked about was how he was such a godly man and how he would never do anything to put students in danger. His character was not in question. His performance on August the 27th, when he made a choice not to report a school threat, was what was in question. Now, it's not like this was some gray line that wasn't drawn out in a handbook somewhere. It was written down in black and white, exactly what he was supposed to do, but he didn't do it. Now, after this went unreported, that mother went to Springville Police Department and reported this threat. She spoke to the chief of police, and she found out that this threat had, in fact, not been reported to anybody. Now, the chief of police at Springville Police Department called the SRO at Springville Middle School, and that got the ball rolling. That child was removed from the school. He had to go on a mandatory 5-day hold until they could determine if the threat was real. And then it was time to punish Wesley Graham. There was no punishment. The St. Clair County Board of Education put him on administrative leave for a little while, and they let him come right back. And every single media organization that asked St. Clair County Board of Education why Wesley Graham was put on leave, they wouldn't answer. They had no reply for that. Now, we know that Wesley Graham lied about what he did on that day and the actions that were taken after, because once this became public information, he had to send out an email. He had to admit, at least partially, to what he had done. Now, again, Wesley Graham's character is not in question here. His behavior on that day in his position as principal at Springville Middle School is what is in question. And the St. Clair County Board of Education answered that question very loudly at the board meeting that was held on September the 16th. There were two of us who sat on the front row at that St. Clair County Board of Education meeting on September the 16th. The mother who reported the incident and myself. Everybody else sat in the back. People were very ugly, very ugly. And one parent stood up and spoke. I guess he was elected their speaker for the night. This parent talked about a few different things. One, he talked about how Wesley Graham was a godly man and how he wouldn't possibly lie, and how Wesley Graham had handled the threat that was made on August the 27th at Springville Middle School the way that he should have handled it. And then that parent went on to say that the mother posting what happened and letting the public know that a threat had been made at their children's school in Springville, Alabama at Springville Middle School. And myself, who shared that story so that other parents would know what happened at Springville Middle School, because again, this was never reported. Parents were not notified until after Springville Police Department notified the SRO at Springville Middle School. Me and that mother were accused of cyberbullying because we put this information out to the public so that it couldn't be covered up, so that it couldn't be swept under the rug. We were accused of cyberbullying. When you post the truth about things that have happened so that they cannot be covered up, that is not cyberbullying. That's just telling the truth. Let me tell y'all, the bullying that that mother and her son have been subjected to by the Springville parents in Springville, Alabama since August the 27th, 2025 is the stuff of nightmares. I mean, these people seem to have some kind of vendetta against her. I mean, it's some Lex Luthor Superman level stuff. And Wesley Graham, the principal at Springville Middle School, has been repeatedly asked to make this bullying stop, to just step up and tell the whole truth so that people understood that this mother did not lie. He will not do that. Now, I'm not sure what accountability looks like to y'all, but that's certainly not what it looks like to me. Somebody that won't own their mistakes, all of them, publicly, well, that's not accountability. I'm pretty sure I know why Wesley Graham handled this particular situation the way that he did. You see, almost a year before that August the 27th, 2025 threat was made by that student that Wesley Graham did not handle appropriately, another situation occurred. There was a student walking around the school singing some lyrics from a song, and apparently they were kind of threatening. I'm guessing there ain't many kids over there at Springville Middle School that has parents that listen to ghetto rap. Anyway, them kids heard him sing that song and they thought he was making a threat, so they went and told on him. And I mean, it was all hands on deck. And the email went out, the kid got in trouble, it was a whole thing. And then they had to send out another email that said, whoop, there wasn't no threat. He was just singing, you know, expose your kids to some gangster rap or something in the future, so they recognize it when they hear it and don't think somebody's trying to take them out. Anyways, pretty sure that's why Wesley Graham did not handle that situation the way that he was supposed to on August the 27th. Now, today, nothing else has been done. The kid went back to school. Wesley Graham's back at work. And that mother and her son are still being bullied to this day. Now, on September the 19th, over there at Asheville High School in Asheville, Alabama, you know, they got a history of hiring child predators or just people that are inappropriate with kids in general. Now, there was a coach named William Richardson that was allowed to resign. And he was being inappropriate with a student. I'm not saying that it was sexual in nature. I'm just saying that something inappropriate occurred and he was allowed to resign. I'm going to talk about something right here while I got the chance. Grooming is something that happens before someone assaults your child. And typically that grooming is not really illegal. If they don't talk about anything inappropriate in nature, then it's not really illegal for that to occur. And I've seen that happen a lot in St. Clair County, Alabama. A lot of inappropriate relationships with adults in school systems and children. Yep. And a lot of times, if it's a teacher or a coach or whatever, they're allowed to resign and just move on to another school. So that happened on September the 19th. Now, on September the 23rd, there was a threat at Moody High School. Now, Dr. Christopher Walters, he handled it. Some student made a hit list, and buddy, they were on it quick, fast, in a hurry. And that gave me hope for Moody, because I was like, heck yeah, they're not going to be another Springville. They're going to handle everything as soon as that happened. And I found out later, unfortunately, if y'all know the Moody situation, that ain't true. The next situation come the very next day. Yep, over there at Moody Junior High. Now, that happened on September the 24th. It was another threat. And again, they were on it. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. Like, I was like, damn it, gum, y'all. Moody is on it. Moody's handling stuff over there at their school. I ain't even gonna have to pay attention to them, you know. And then I did. Because now at this point, y'all, we're only 42 days into the school year. We are only 42 days into the St. Clair County, Alabama school year at this point. Okay. We've had children assaulted. Threats have been made. Multiple threats have been made. People have been allowed to resign because of being inappropriate. 42 days into the school year. The next situation in St. Clair County schools was literally the next day, September the 25th. Tyler Easter, an employee over there at Odenville Middle School in Odenville, yep, the same school where that situation happened at that dance, was arrested for electronic solicitation of a child. He was texting back and forth with a child. Yep, with a child. Again, I'm not real sure why this whole child predator thing is so predominant in St. Clair County schools, but it's disturbing. Y'all need to handle that. Now that brings us up to October the 7th. We're back at Springville again. This time we're at Springville High School. Now, a student brought a weapon into the lunchroom in the morning. She intended to take her own life. Now, she intended to do this at the school because she had been bullied for years, from my understanding. That's just what I've been told. I've not spoken to that student directly. I've not spoken to the family of that student directly. But she brought a weapon into the lunchroom at Springville High School. Now, thankfully, before she did anything, she called law enforcement officials herself. They came to the school and they took the weapon away from her, and she's getting some help. Now, there were a few things that happened in this situation that are just a little baffling to me, so let's talk about that right now. Now, Springville High School and Springville Middle School announced over the loudspeaker that there was an active shooter, and that was not true. I mean, they scared the crap out of them kids. Literally scared the crap out of them kids. And once all this was over with, the school day did not stop. They did not close Springville schools that day. They did not send them kids home to process exactly what had happened, what some of them had seen in the lunchroom with law enforcement officials, with a weapon, with all of that, nor able to process being told over loudspeaker that there's an active shooter in your school from children who have to do active shooter drills, who see active shooters on the news. Yeah. Now, at that St. Clair County Board of Education meeting back on September the 16th, we were told if we ever had any questions, we should reach out to them. So that's what I did after that incident that happened over there at Springville High School on October the 7th, 2025, when that student brought a weapon into the lunchroom. I reached out to the Springville representative that is on the St. Clair County Board of Education. Now, that would be Kathy Wise. And I asked her about this incident. I asked her pointed questions about the behavior of other administrators at Springville schools, and if she believes that those behaviors and their lack of following protocol had possibly led to this incident. I didn't receive a response from her. I didn't really think I would, but that's not the only St. Clair County Board of Education member that I have reached out to during this year. And that brings us to the Moody football team, y'all. So buckle up, because there's a lot to this one, even more than I have even covered on any of my social media channels. So to get this ball rolling about Moody, Alabama, that football team, and everything that has gone on, we're going to have to go back in time. I don't have a time machine, so I'm just going to tell you where we're going to. We're going back to 2021, December, when Jake Gaines was hired as a head football coach over there at Moody High School. Now, did y'all know that the Moody Chief of Police has a podcast? He sure does. It's called Chief's Briefs. Now, I would think the Chief of Police probably got other stuff to do, aside from making a podcast, but I guess whatever. I checked out his podcast the other day. I must tell you what, it's a little strange. He's kind of fangirling over different people who hold different positions in Moody and in St. Clair County and stuff like that. But I did find one podcast particularly interesting. He talked to Jake Gaines not long after he became the head football coach over there at Moody, Alabama. Now, Jake Gaines made a statement. I thought, well, that's weird right there. That's a strange statement to make. I've listened to a lot of interviews over the year with some football coaches because I love me some football. When people ask them why they decided to become the coach of a team, there's usually all kinds of answers, like they like the state or they like the fan base or a lot of different things. But according to Jake Gaines, the thing that made him decide to become the head football coach in Moody, Alabama, was Moody passing that ad valorem tax. Now, that happened in November of 2021, and I'll be danged, Jake Gaines was hired in December of 2021. See, right now, y'all are probably going, what in the heck's that got to do with some cigar smoking? We're going to get there. Buckle up. This one gets good. So I told y'all that Moody, Alabama passed that old property tax back in November of 2021. It took a little while to get that rolling. Yeah, I know this is important. Just keep up with me here. After they got that all rolling, Moody, Alabama. Now, Nick Rutledge was still a council member at that point. He wasn't mayor yet. Now, him and another dude petitioned the St. Clair County Commission to allow part of those administrative fees on collecting that tax to be returned to St. Clair County Board of Education. Now, the deal was that St. Clair County Board of Education couldn't use that money for themselves. It had to be redistributed. Now, the resolution that was passed by the St. Clair County Commission that allowed this to happen was Resolution 2023-74. And again, that allowed them to recoup some of those administrative fees and have that sent back to St. Clair County Board of Education, but it had to be redistributed. And then the city of Moody petitioned to allow some of that money to be returned to them so they could pay coaches. Isn't that strange that Jake Gaines said that he went to Moody because they passed a tax? I mean, not because he loved Moody and not because all this, but because they passed that tax. He said that he knew they were serious. And then all of a sudden, the city of Moody is petitioning to have part of that return so they can pay them coaches. I don't know what Jake Gaines and his staff were promised, but supplements they got. Over $156,000 worth of supplements while Jake Gaines was a head football coach over there at Moody High School. And that doesn't even count what the two trainers were paid that were contracted directly through the St. Clair County Board of Education. Honey, they were paid a whole other way. We'll get into that in just a minute. Now, it's important to mention here in regards to that whole ad valorem thing and that old Resolution 2023-74 that people in Moody found out about that, right? And they tried to get that information out to the citizens of Moody before Nick Rutledge could be elected mayor. Because again, at this point, Nick Rutledge was still sitting on the city council in Moody, but he was one of the council members that submitted that request over the ad valorem tax and it being diverted to pay supplement incomes to those coaches. You see, the reason those people couldn't get that information to the citizens of Moody before Nick Rutledge was elected to be mayor is because the Freedom of Information request that was issued to the St. Clair County Board of Education so that they could prove that this money was being diverted to pay coaches was intentionally delayed. by the St. Clair County Board of Education until after Nick Rutledge was elected mayor of Moody, Alabama. Something else that I found a little strange is that the city of Moody bought an AstroTurf scraper. I personally found that a little odd. Why would the city of Moody buy an AstroTurf scraper? They don't have any AstroTurf anywhere. And Moody schools are county schools. They're not city schools. The city of Moody also bought some computer program to run a big old scoreboard, but that's over there at the high school too. Again, that's a county school. So that just seems a little strange to me. And after all those situations got handled and taken care of, it was time to get them old football coaches on staff and pay them as teachers. Most of them didn't have a teaching certificate, so they got them an emergency one. And just side note here, some of them coaches are still over there at Moody High School, and them teaching certificates have lapsed, so somebody might want to check on that. And after all that got handled, the money's rolling in, and they got them coaches in there teaching, or at least pretending like they are. Well, then it was time to start recruiting, y'all. I mean, they's pulling players from all over the damn place. From Gardendale, from Springville, from Hewitt, from Oak Mountain, and from Kentucky, y'all. They pulled a player to Moody, Alabama, all the way from Kentucky. Now we got Jake Gaines getting paid, and we got his other coaches getting paid. So let's take care of them training staff that was contracted straight through St. Clair County Board of Education. Now there was something strange going on. After that concession stand would close after them ball games, they would just take that cash out of the concession stands and hand it straight to them two trainers. And that's a little weird, right? They weren't even counting that money. They were just giving it to them. There were also apparently a bunch of gift cards that were given to those trainers. You know, they were trying to equal out that income that they had promised them, you know, things that couldn't be tracked. Now I'm going to go back to that old Jake Gaines podcast over there with Chiefs Briefs again, because the Chief commented that he hadn't had any trouble at any of the football players since old Jake Gaines had been over there. Now that was such a strange statement to me, because I know in 2024 a Moody High School football player and two of his friends almost beat a man to death in Asheville, Alabama. They left him laying in the parking lot at the rest stop. A veteran. You see, those teenagers had been at the truck meet that day in Steele, Alabama. They'd been drinking. They'd gotten thrown out. They were pissed off. They hit the interstate flying in the big old trucks with them big old wheels. Now, they claimed that that man, that veteran that was on a trike, tried to run them off the road, and that he had a weapon and that he showed it to them. But we know that's not true, because you see, these teenagers were thoughtful enough to film the assault that they committed on that veteran in the parking lot at the rest stop in Asheville, Alabama. You see, they filmed it. You see, the video that's being taken by a girl that was with these three boys starts as they're confronting this man in the parking lot, three teenagers and one man. Then one of the teenagers sucker punches the man. And as they're beating him on the ground and kicking him, the girl that's taking the video screams, "He has a gun." That's the point where these children realized that this man had a gun. They then took his gun and left him laying in the parking lot at that rest stop. He had broken ribs. He had a punctured lung. They left that man laying in that parking lot to die. And had they not posted those videos online of them assaulting that man, he very likely would have died in that parking lot. Now, they took his weapon, they threw it out of their truck, and they headed on home. And they didn't tell anybody what happened other than posting those videos. And they didn't tell anybody what happened because they were drinking and because they instigated it. You know what happened to those kids? They got a little slap on the wrist. You know how I know they didn't learn their lesson? Because once I started making these videos about Moody, Alabama, the father of the boy that was on the Moody High School football team messaged me. He wanted to tell me about how his son was such a good kid and how he just got a bad deal and how Jake Gaines was so mean to him. And when I told that father that I knew exactly who he was and what his son did, well, let's just say he used that big old B word on me and he didn't want to talk to me anymore. And that wasn't the only bad behavior by Moody High School football players. People in public were talking about them. They'd kind of gotten pretty cocky since Jake Gaines had taken over and they'd started winning some football games. Now we're going to move forward to the football season this year when Springville played Moody, Alabama. See, something happened on the sidelines at that game. One of the Springville players got over there in the midst of the Moody football players and they were kind of tuffling around. That old Cam Willis was standing over there on them sidelines. Now he should have broke that up, right? But he didn't. He grabbed a hold of that Springville player and shoved him back out on the field. Now, this is on videotape, and it was reported to the St. Clair County Board of Education. The St. Clair County Board of Education decided that counseling Cam Willis for putting his hands on a student was the appropriate action to take, and that's exactly what happened. Now let's move forward to when Moody was playing Corner High School. Now there was a corner student, a senior. He had broken his neck, fractured, if you will. Some of y'all seem to be real confused that a fracture is still a break. Anyway, this senior football player from Corner, Alabama wanted to walk the field one more time. It was very likely that they would not play another football game. And his football career in high school was soon to end because he was going to graduate. So he went out there before the game, before anyone had dressed out to play the game, and walked onto the field. He had on his neck brace. He had another player next to him. He just wanted to walk on the field one more time. Moody players ran onto the field and knocked him down. That player was evaluated by medical staff. Corners football staff acknowledged that this happened. Moody High School's football staff acknowledged that this happened the night that it occurred, but not after. Now, when this incident was addressed in public, again, those parents rallied around those players. I mean, it was very much a, oh, not my child type of situation, but it was their children, and it did happen. Even if it wasn't addressed by any of them, it happened. Now that's going to bring us to the incident that occurred over there at Protective Stadium. You know, when Moody High School football won that 05A state championship. They're in the locker room after a 5A state championship win. Years of being built up to be cocky and think the rules do not apply to you. They're standing in there. They're building each other up. The mayor's there. The SRO is there. The coaches are all there. Everybody's standing around. Everybody's excited. They just won. The first state championship won by Moody High School at a school that had been open for over 40 years. Everybody was rightfully excited. But then those students, those children who played that football game, who won that 5A state championship, lit up cigars. Now, from my information, those cigars were given to those students by a coach. And that same coach was the person who took the fall for this incident. So I'm not saying 100% that a coach from Moody High School gave those cigars to those students, but I am saying from where I'm standing and looking, it's looking like it's almost 100%. This coach, Cam Willis, a contracted worker with St. Clair County Board of Education, is the person that took the fall for the cigar incident. He was walked out of Moody High School the Monday following the championship. He was immediately hired by Pell City High School. A coach who reportedly contributed to the delinquency of minors was then hired by another school system. Now, the Moody High School football players posted videos and photos all over the place online of them smoking these cigars. Nick Rutledge, the mayor of Moody, Alabama, posted photos of himself standing in the locker room with the children, the football players, smoking cigars behind him in the background. There were photos of these children smoking cigars with the SRO officer. Now, I'm not saying that smoking cigars is this awful thing that they have done. I am saying that this is a double standard. If any other student had lit up a cigarette, a cigar, or hit a vape in front of Nick Rutledge, in front of the SRO, in front of the principal of Moody High School, they would have immediately been in trouble. But these students weren't. In fact, they walked around and smoked the entire cigar and did damage to the Protective Stadium locker room. And these Moody High School football players are proud of what they did. In fact, they made posts online and tagged UAB and apologized for the damage in the locker room. And on Google Maps, they have changed the name of the Protective Stadium locker room to the 411 Boys Cigar Lounge. This behavior is just further evidence of the good old boy system, where people believe that the rules just don't apply to them, especially if they're an athlete, or they have a specific last name, or if they have a certain amount of money. Now, because the Moody football players and the mayor and the coaches posted these videos and photos online of these children smoking in the Protective Stadium locker room, UAB found out about it. The Alabama High School Athletic Association found out about it. Not because I made posts on TikTok, but because people reported this Lots and lots of people saw this online. They were not okay with it. There were consequences for Moody High School. There were consequences for the coach. Not big consequences, just a little slap on the wrist, like, don't do that again. And if you do, don't post it in public because people saw you. Now, you'd have thought these Moody High School football players and their parents would have learned something, especially after this was published and all the local news, everybody was talking about it. The Alabama High School Athletic Association got involved. They didn't. I still get messages today. I still get threats all the time because I talk about these things. I mean, that's pretty disturbing, y'all. I openly talk on Facebook about wanting to beat me up, about wanting to catch me out in public. I still get messages today telling me to unalive myself, telling me not to get caught out in public alone because they're going to take care of me. Honey, I go places every single day. I ain't scared of none of y'all. Now, that brings us up to the worst kept secret in St. Clair County history, y'all. I mean, there's never been a secret that has been less kept than this secret right here. That Jake Gaines was going to jump ship over there at that Moody cash cow and take himself and his coaching staff on over there to Pell City and be the head football coach over there. I'm guessing people didn't really expect Jake Gaines to take so many players with him when he left Moody, but that's exactly what he's doing. He's recruiting over there at Pell City just like he did over there at Moody High School. And Jake Gaines is not just taking the players that he recruited to come to Moody. He's taking some homegrown Moody players too. I done told you about all the money that was thrown at that football program at Moody High School. All while teachers don't have enough textbooks for their kids. Teachers are having to go in there and make Xerox copies of textbook pages so they can pass them around. And those football players, the ones that won that 5A state championship, the ones that worked their butts off to get there, they're having to pay for their own championship rings. Now that's just crazy. Moody High School and the city of Moody threw all that money at that football program, and they couldn't figure out a way to raise the money to pay for those championship rings. That's just wrong. Kind of like punishing those football players for smoking those cigars. They shouldn't have been punished. They weren't the ones who decided that they should smoke those cigars. The coaching staff, Jake Gaines and his coaches, are the ones that set the standard in that locker room for those Moody High School football players that told them that the rules didn't apply to them. And after it was all said and done, when it was time to face that firing squad, Jake Gaines jumped ship and fled to Pell City. Now that we've talked about all the stuff that's going on in these St. Clair County schools this year, and y'all, it's only February. It is only February. Let's talk about the St. Clair County Board of Education and the fact that they have lied repeatedly. Or the fact that when these situations come up, the first thing they say in their little press release is how they did the job that they were supposed to do. That is not their job. Their job is not to send out CYA emails. Their job is to protect your children. Their job is to apply the rules equally across the board to every single student in St. Clair County, Alabama. Their job is to follow protocol that has been set by the St. Clair County Board of Education every single time to keep your children safe. It is time that all of you that do not agree with this good old boy system that has been allowed to thrive unencumbered for decades. It has been encouraged. It has been supported. It has been passed on for generation after generation after generation. Y'all have got to stand up and say something. There are a few of us out here talking about this, but there's not near enough people, and they can't shut us all up. They can't punish everybody. They cannot bully every single parent in St. Clair County, Alabama that does not agree with this good old boy system. So now we've come to the part where you say, what can I do? You need to vote. You need to go to meetings. You need to go to school board meetings. You need to go to county meetings. You need to go to city meetings. You need to voice your opinion. You need to pay attention who's getting elected to these positions. You need to look at what their voting record is. You need to look at what they stand for. And if they don't stand for what you like, don't vote for these people. Some of these people have been sitting on that Board of Education for years and years and years. It's time to do something different. It is time for when something like this happens in St. Clair County, if there is a threat in a school, if there is a child that is assaulted, if there's a child that is attacked, if there's a child that is being stalked, the very first response from your Board of Education should not be, well, we did our job. That's not your job. Now, we've talked about a whole lot of different stuff tonight when it comes to St. Clair County schools and all the different issues that are going on. There are good things happening too. And this system is not broken. It can be fixed if we do something now. If it keeps going, it's not going to be repairable. It'll be too far gone. There'll be no coming back from that. So stand up and say something now. I want to thank every one of y'all for hanging out with me tonight on the porch with Munchies and Murder while we talked about all the different things going on in St. Clair County schools. I know that I love my children, and I'm sure that you love your children too. We can stand up and do something now. Y'all don't forget to join me back again here next week where we're going to dive deep again on more Alabama crime and corruption.